In this video, I'll be sharing with you my 5 favorite things from the Azamara cruise that I took in June from Lisbon to Barcelona, the stops along the way, and we're gonna be talking about things like the ship size, where you dock, a special experience that you can only have with Azamara in Seville, and stick around because at the end, I'm also gonna tell you what my favorite port stop was on the trip. And guess what? It's on my next year's cruise in 2026 in June. I will be cruising again with Azamara. And if this sounds like something that you want to join, come along. That cruise next year in June of 2026 is going to be a 2-week adventure on the Azamara Quest, starting in Barcelona, getting all the way around the Iberian Peninsula, and wrapping things up in Bordeaux. With stops along the way in Valencia, Cartagena, Malaga, Gibraltar, Seville for a couple nights, Lisbon, Porto, Bilbao, San Sebastián, and then an overnight stay in Bordeaux. I am super excited about this amazing itinerary. It's my first journey into the cruise world where you can come along with me. I've put together a special list of activities that are gonna only be available for our group, and you'll have me along with you for expert advice into all of these different places. And I'm super excited to share everything that I've learned in 15 years of living here in Spain with you on this cruise and take you along with me. So if you're interested in what will be a full Iberian adventure, look at the link below and you can find all of that information to get the cabin that you want, or use the QR code that I'll put right here to make it even easier for you. And I hope to see you next year. Now, the cruise that I was just on the Azamara onwards, starting in Lisbon, getting over to Seville, Ceuta, Malaga, and then Barcelona, was a scouting trip ahead for next year so I could get everything prepped and get an idea for the company, and I had a really great time. So we're going to talk about some of my favorite things that I'm most looking forward to in the 2026 cruise as well, and why an Azamara cruise is such a great idea to get around Spain with me. Now, the first thing that we're going to talk about is the ship size. And it's not just the ship size, but it's also going to lead into the next 2 things that we're going to talk about. But with an Azamara cruise, these are much smaller ships. And so what you have is about 700 people on board. We never felt like there were people all around. We definitely had our space, never had to wait in line for anything at all. And the service was absolutely incredible. People on board were so nice and very attentive to everything that we needed. But what really is special about that Azamara ship size is what it leads into and where you're able to dock. Because it's such a smaller ship, you're able to dock much closer to those city centers where you won't have to take buses. I don't think we had to take any sort of mode of transportation to get into the city center in any of our stops along the way. In Lisbon, we were right on the cusp of that old city center. Seville was the place where we were probably the furthest, but later we're going to talk about why the trip to Seville is so special on the Azamara cruises. And even when we were in Malaga, we were right in the very city center. Ceuta, we basically just kind of got off the boat and we were in the center of the city. And then finally, Barcelona, where I'm even filming just right now. A lot of the cruise ships, those bigger cruise ships, have to be over onto the docks for A, B, C, D, E, which are a little bit further. They do have buses, they do have things that can get you over with transfers. But when you are in the very, very city center, maybe a 5-minute walk from La Rambla, it makes everything so much easier. And that has everything to do with that ship size, being able to get over and dock much, much closer. The other thing, apart from docking closer, is also the longer port times. And that's one of the biggest things that I had always heard about cruising and kind of cruises in general, that you don't get a lot of time in the city center. With this ship, being able to dock in these places and being able to go to places that aren't so far from each other, we have much longer port times. And why I'm so excited about that is because we get to really explore. You don't feel rushed. You can really feel like you get to see a city. We're gonna have port docking times of over 10 hours in many, many places, 12, 14-hour stops where you can even get off the ship, get back on, and get back into the city. Because you're docked so close, it's very easy to do that. There are going to be some stops, primarily Seville. That's what we had on this last cruise, and will be there on the 2026 cruise as well, that allows you to stay overnight, not once, but twice. So that really gives you a good time to get into the city. and really take in everything. And with so much to see in Seville, that's a really special treat. But with that ship size and the ability to dock, the ability to stay in those ports for much longer, you do have a lot more of those options where you don't feel like you didn't see the city at all, not just a little glimpse, but a little bit more of that, to where you can also do some sort of activity, but also just kind of relax. And that was one of my favorite things that we got to do in many of the cities, where you got to just kind of sit back, relax, have a coffee, really take in the city vibes and get an idea for what each of them had to offer. Now, on a 14-hour stop, I don't expect everybody to be off the ship the entire time that we're in a city, but with this cruise, you do get to see those cities, but more than anything, you get to see the country. Now, what we did is we went from Lisbon to Barcelona and got to see 4 other places within Spain. But for next year, one of the things that I'm most excited about with the itinerary is that it's including 4 different countries. Not only do we have Spain, but we've got Gibraltar in the UK. You've got 2 stops along the way in Portugal, and then finally finishing up in France. But not only is it 4 different countries, but it's 5 different autonomous regions that we have over here in Spain. Starting off in Catalonia in Barcelona, you get down to Valencia, you get over to Murcia, and then we get into Andalusia with both Malaga and Seville included. But then getting all the way around, you get over and you get to see the Basque Country, which is one of my favorite autonomous regions to visit within all of Spain. And that's one of the big things that I'm so excited about within the itinerary as a whole, is just being able to show all of those differences within Spain. Spain is so many different things. It isn't just one idea, so many different parts of the culture, the food, even the different languages that are all around, and that's what we're gonna be able to explore. The other thing, this really isn't even on the list, but it's like you're in a floating hotel. You don't have to kind of pick up your bags and move them every day, every 2 days or anything. I was just in Colombia this summer and we did a great trip, but every 2 or 3 days we had to get up to a different city. And when you have to pack and you have to unpack again and again, it really is something different when you can just unpack once, see all of these places, and then pack again. Now, believe it or not, how I found out about Azamara and just the cruise as a whole was through a client who had booked a tour with me after getting off, and they were explaining their route and how they had gone over to Seville. And then when I heard that, I said, oh, where did you stop? Where did you get over to Seville from? Because usually with those bigger cruises, you can't get over to Seville without docking in maybe a place like Cadiz. But if you dock in Cadiz, that puts you about 2 hours away from Seville. So it really does limit the time that you have in Seville to explore. I said, no, because the ship's so small, we actually got up the river and got into Seville. And as silly as it sounds, that was probably one of the coolest experiences that we had on that cruise this June, and again, we'll be repeating the next year, getting over to Seville. But because, again, of that ship size, we got up the river. The Guadalquivir is really the largest, the only navigable river in all of Spain. And so a lot of these cruises, because of the size of those ships, can't get up them. This is a small enough ship where one of the big experiences is just getting from that Atlantic up into the river and getting over to Seville. Now, it probably was the furthest place that we had from the city center on the last trip, but just getting up and seeing where all of those boats in the 15th, 16th century were leaving from to get over to that new world that was being found, and seeing just kind of the whole building of that dynasty and what that history was something really cool. You also pass by some of these older towns and things and get a little feel of something a little bit different than kind of what I'm used to, at least every day here in Barcelona. But just sailing up and sailing back down that river was a really cool experience. And the benefits of that, like I said, we're being able to be in Seville. And because we're spending 2 nights and because we spent the night over there, you have much more time to explore everything that Seville offers. Now, like I said, on that scouting trip, we went from Lisbon over to Seville, stopped in Ceuta, then went to Malaga and finished up in Barcelona. Obviously, because I live in Barcelona, that wasn't going to be my favorite stop along the trip. The one that I was most excited for before we even started the cruise was getting over to Ceuta, because it's over in Africa and it was something that I had never seen before. That was the one that kind of stuck out the most to me. But after the cruise, looking back and really thinking about everything that we experienced and thinking about the things that I've been talking to you about right now with what was so incredible about the trip, my favorite part probably had to be Malaga. That was the port that really stuck out and the one that really gives an idea of why I think this cruise is going to be such a great time for this next year. One, we were there for 14 hours. Again, the size of the ship and the docking location, we were right in the city center. You got off the boat and you were already at the tourist information point, which is just across the street from Calle Larios, right in the center, the most famous street in all of Malaga. The one that if you look at Christmas time, how they decorate it with the lights is absolutely incredible. But it leads you right into the city center, Plaza de la Constitución, and you're not too far from all of the main attractions. I actually personally got into the city, walked around, did a tour in the morning, got back onto the boat, did a little bit of a workout, and then got off again so that I could go and continue exploring. And that gave me plenty of time, not only to have an activity in the morning, get back on the ship, and then spend the rest of the afternoon into the evening on the ship. It was the perfect experience of the idea of getting and seeing almost an entire city without the rush. Now, what I did when I got back off the boat is I met up with Dave and Jans, who were on the cruise with me, doing that scouting and really getting all of the material that we needed for next year. And we had an amazing lunch at El Pimpi, my favorite restaurant when I get over to Malaga. And then we were also able to get over and see some of the different bars that I love going to whenever I'm over in Malaga. But that gave us a completely different feel. I had done the very kind of touristy thing in the morning, done the tour, but really had a chill evening and afternoon that didn't feel rushed, and it did feel like I was really experiencing the city. So even though I've been to Malaga before, it's probably the place that most highlighted along the cruise what I think are the benefits of taking this trip and getting around, and for next year being able to see all of these different places. We'll be able to not only see the history and the culture to it, but really sit down and take in a city and understand it. And because we're going to so many different places, we'll be able to see so many different parts of everything that Spain has to offer. So those are my 5 favorite takeaways from my Azamara trip last June from Lisbon to Barcelona. And if you think that's the kind of style of travel and you want to come and join me on the Iberian adventure that will be of 2026, remember that you can find all of that information below. It's a 14-day, 11-stop full Iberian adventure going from Barcelona all around the peninsula over to Bordeaux, and I'm super excited to be able to share it with you. But spots and cabins are limited, so book now to make sure that you get your spot. And early bookers will also have the option for a free tour with me in Malaga or Seville. Hope to see you there.